He is one of the best baseball writers and insiders in the business. Jon Paul Morosi writes for MLB.com. You also see him on MLB Network and on Fox. Jon, what's your gut feeling right now? Are we going to see baseball this summer?
Well, Jack, thanks for having me on the show today. I believe we will. And then this is really an important week as well as MLB and the union get talking about what the agreement could look like. Certainly the owners with a lot of input this week as well. And of course, as we get closer to next month, a lot of feedback from the public health officials and government officials around the country. But I believe, Jack, there is a better than 50-50 chance we see Major League Baseball this year.
Well, that's good to hear. And Jon, there's been a lot of discussion about teams playing at their spring training stadiums, a Florida League, an Arizona League. What are the chances Tigers fans will see this team play at Comerica Park?
Well, I think, Jack, the Tigers playing at Comerica and then fans seeing them at Comerica are two very different things. I think that certainly there's a pretty decent chance the Tigers would be able to play their home games there, but it's likely to be in front of empty stadiums for the foreseeable future and maybe even for the entire season. So I think that of the wide range of options right now, Jack, that playing in their home stadiums is the first choice of MLB and certainly the players as well. But I would expect that as part of these agreements and conversations, that there is going to be a hinge in the agreement, so to speak, where if the coronavirus becomes a significant concern again at a very high level in certain areas around MLB, that those games could then be moved back down to a spring training or neutral site location.
You know, there aren't a ton of really big free agent names coming up this summer, but Mookie Betts is one. How do you think this shutdown will impact him and free agents?
It's an excellent question, Jack, because I certainly think the Dodgers, they want to make sure Mookie plays for them if at all possible. They traded some players away to get him just last winter, and certainly the possibility exists that Mookie would become a free agent without ever playing a game for the Dodgers. I certainly think that there may be a greater appetite depending on how the economics of our country look and the industry of baseball look by the end of the year, that perhaps teams will try hard to sign their own players before they get to free agency. But like all of us, Jack, in the United States of America right now, there's a lot of uncertainty economically, and we're not sure what that means for those multi-million-dollar salaries that have recently exceeded now $300 million for a single player.
Jon, you still live in Michigan, so I'm sure you've seen the Tigers play plenty of baseball. Do you see a light at the end of this rebuild tunnel?
I do, Jack. It's going to take some time, and certainly I think for the Tiger fans, what happens with the Whitecaps is just as important as what happens at the Major League level still right now. We're going to start to see more of the prospects, and certainly on the pitching side, the likes of Mize and Manning coming up now to the major leagues, we hope, certainly during the course of 2020. But I would expect that this year is certainly still a tough year, but as you start to look more towards 2021 and 2022, winning records become possible. And now, of course, with the top overall pick, which will still happen at some point in time here this year, we believe, perhaps a Spencer Torkelson to be the first baseman of the future.
All right, you were born and raised in the state of Michigan. Jon, when you went off to Harvard, did you know you wanted to be a baseball writer?
No, I thought I was going to be a football coach and a chemistry teacher. I kind of missed the mark on that one, Jack, on how I was doing with my career projections at that point in time. But when I was there, I found while I was at campus at Harvard that really for me, sports were what felt like home. I grew up in a small town outside of Bay City. And so to me, this new place that was at times intimidating and unfamiliar, sports were what I knew. And I started going over across the river to the athletic complex to write stories for the Crimson and to keep stats at the hockey games. And it just felt comfortable to do that. And certainly I told myself probably about my sophomore year, all right, I'm going to do this until someone tells me it's time to grow up and get a real job. Jack, it hasn't happened yet. It may happen tomorrow, but it hasn't happened yet. So I've been pretty blessed to be able to do this for a pretty long time.
Well, I remember first meeting you at a Whitecaps game, Jon. You were an intern for the Grand Rapids Press. How did you climb this ladder so quickly, and how much does an internship like that help out?
Thanks for remembering that, and certainly thanks for being so gracious to me when I was a kid there at 21 years of age at Fifth Third Ballpark covering the Whitecaps games. Joel Zamaya was a young 19-year-old back, and I think that was maybe the second or third time that Phil Regan tried to retire. He's probably on his 6th or 7th bid right now, but he's still going. I saw him actually last summer at a New York Mets game. But I tell you what, Jack, just being at the ballpark, and I credit Mary Ulmer certainly for sending me out there a lot from the Grand Rapids Press to be able to get a lot of experience and cover the Whitecaps and write a lot of stories. I think for any young journalist, Jack, and you know this, experience is key, and having an open mind and being willing to take on different assignments. I certainly covered sports that I didn't really have a lot of familiarity with, but you just learn how to be a quick study and meet a lot of people and have an open mind and just find those great stories. And it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of reading and conversation. But I've just been really blessed in a lot of ways to grow up in a family that love to tell stories. And here I am, Jack, all these years later, still telling stories.
Well, we could see the talent back then, John. You put out a tweet this weekend talking about the real heroes in this world right now. And your wife, Alexis, is a doctor. She spent Mother's Day working with COVID patients. How is she handling this?
It's been difficult, but also I think, Jack, it's given our family a real clear sense of purpose as to what we're doing here, why we're here, and it's to help others, certainly with what Alexis is doing right now at the very top of the list. I'm so proud of her and all the work she's put in the medical profession, and certainly it's the people she works alongside as well, the nurses, the first responders, everybody involved. So I think it's been humbling for us. It's been, to use a word, centering for me to understand what I'm here to do and raise our daughters while my wife is at the hospital. So, Jack, on my very best day, the gap between what I do for a living and what Alexis does is vast, but it is now the Grand Canyon. And so I'm just trying to keep things going day by day and show her the appreciation. And also, I think for all the healthcare workers in our lives, sometimes it's important to ask her how the day went, and sometimes she just wants to be able to relax and be mom. So I think it's all about what we can all do as family members and citizens too to help those that are on the front lines of all this.
John, I'm curious, how much of a strain does this put on the family? Because do you guys have to separate since she's working so closely?
It's a great question. Yeah. So basically, the kids now know that they don't go near her when she gets home until she's had a chance to get all the medical clothes out in a safe spot and be able to wash them and take her shower and kind of get ready and be able to be mom again. So that they've had to know that there's a element of social distancing even at the house, so to speak, before they can really talk to her again and interact with her. So the girls have been great. They understand. And certainly we've had a lot of commotion probably in the background of my work, such as it is here in recent days, where I may be on a call like this or on the air and you'll hear the girls in the background. So we're all doing our best. And certainly there have been times when they've probably watched a little more cartoons than I'd like them to be watching right now, Jack. But we find ways also to bring about the current learning and the situations that the kids are in right now. I know reading the American Girl series with my daughters, I've got 3 of them. With the oldest one, I've told her, listen, what you're living through right now will be the subject of books in years, just as you're learning about girls that lived through World War II or the Civil Rights era. So I think it's an opportunity to certainly educate our kids as well.
Having 2 daughters, I'm very familiar with that series. Have fun at the American Girl store when this pandemic ends.
Yes.
John, the last time the Tigers were in the World Series, we talked about your days at Harvard, and it was a hold the phone moment because you had some very well-known classmates. Mark Zuckerberg, one of them. You were one of the original Facebook friends. What was it like in its infancy?
Well, it's a great question, Jack. It was quite a time, certainly. I remember, so Facebook was invented my senior year. It came about the Mark Zuckerberg, who was 2 years behind me, but then the Winklevoss twins, who, if you've seen the movie Social Network, they're prominently displayed and portrayed in that movie. So they were actually rowing teammates of my freshman roommate. So I had known those guys since freshman week, and I remember meeting them for the first time and thinking to myself that I can't even believe I was at the same school as these guys who are super tall, handsome athletes, and I was a 5'9" kid from Essexville, Michigan. I didn't quite realize I was in the same world as these guys, let alone the same class in the same school. So it was definitely a unique time, and I think we kind of go back and see what our classmates have done, and I think we all realize that we have different roles to play, and I certainly realized that I was not going to be able to invent something like that, but I very much enjoyed the company of those who did and be able to understand what that process is like and the creativity and the ingenuity that goes into it. So a lot of great classmates. I had one running for president this past year, so everybody was doing their own part of the world. I'm still going to stay in my lane though, Jack, and focus on baseball and most importantly raising my daughters and supporting my wife right now.
It's a good lane to be in. And how crazy, John, was it to just see this thing explode into a worldwide phenomenon?
It really was. And interestingly, I'll say this and kind of tease my wife because I've been building her up a lot, but I can at least tease her on this point. I remember she was going to Michigan at the time. And so Facebook starts at Harvard and it's becoming this big phenomenon. I remember telling her, hey, listen, this Facebook thing is catching on a little bit. Everybody on campus is signed up, and it's a way that you can see who's in your class, because when you first signed up, it was only at Harvard, and you would enter in your classes. And so then you would click on the class and it would bring up the class roster visually that you could see who was in your class. And she said, it's never going to catch on. It's just some dorky Harvard thing that no one's going to ever pay attention to outside of Michigan, or outside of Harvard. So, Jack, I would tell you, that's the first time that I was ever right in our relationship. I haven't been right since, but I got that one time that every now and then when I'm feeling really bold and courageous, I might bring that up. But usually, Jack, that one kind of stays quiet here in our marriage and our relationship.
Yeah. Two most important words in a marriage, yes, dear. Jon,
that's right.
Jon, thank you for your time, and I really look forward to seeing you at a Major League ballpark very soon.